And therefore, for me, part of the urgency, timeliness, and need part is to flag for the legislature this idea that we do as a state need to undertake an assessment of the adequacy. We're not saying here that they're inadequate or not, that we need 5 years on in a very fast-moving industry to be always checking, are the goals adequate for what we need as a state? And so I think to accommodate your point about protocol, that we could say to the legislature that they should direct me to undertake an assessment of the adequacy of the goals. That's, I feel that is, because otherwise, absent that, we're silent on whether or not the goals are adequate. And I think that it's true and responsible for us to reflect what we've heard across the state of Minnesota, that they're not adequate. But we're not saying as a task force here, this is very neutral language, that they are or are not adequate. We are saying we recommend that there be an assessment about their adequacy. So that's the first thing I'll say, Deborah, and then I'll stop.
So this is a case where I think because the process in the items, although we can differ about where the items go on the list for the policy recommendations, this is a case where inserting an entirely new idea 3 days out from us coming to this meeting is a bit challenging. Because I think that if you would like to push the idea today, you're maybe going to face more vociferous opposition than if we took this item and either said in a letter to Deed, maybe it's time to look at the adequacy of the speeds, versus pushing it through in a legislative process. And I'll tell you why. Every time you enter into that process, you lose control. Whereas we can control what we want to have happen much more by either including in this letter that goes to the commissioner or a letter in a month that goes to the commissioner after we get to discuss this. But I think this is Indeed's purview to do this work. I don't think they have to be directed by the legislature to do it, and I would argue you actually get into a really big problem if you do that. It was so, I mean, I was there when we passed these goals. It was a major freaking dogfight to get to these speeds, wasn't it? You guys who were there? I mean, do you remember the floor fight on this? The floor fight was spectacular that day with Mary Liz Holberg and Joe Atkins, and it went on. I was like, what is this bill? I mean, this was supposed to take 10 minutes. It took, I don't know how long. So my point would be, we can get to this, but to do it through the legislature may be the appropriate thing in the next report, but in this report, I don't feel comfortable handing it over to them without more definition and direction. And we can either do that through the department or not. So that would be my really strong recommendation on that one.
I'm going to invite others. I don't want us to be a dialogue between you and me.
No, I mean, I'd love to hear, but it is inserted 3 days before a report discussion.
I'm sort of distressed by the, this whole thing, but on the 3 days before type thing, after we spent a year working on this, and last month we spent 4 hours hammering out consensus over all of this stuff. But on the policies, and I'll act a little bit like a mother hen, but on the policies, we had, I believe, at least 14 meetings and phone calls on these policies. We asked everybody in this room and anybody who would listen to us at numerous events and said, please, if you have ideas, and any time that we had a witness that spoke before us, we said, what can we do? Give us suggestions. And we tried to incorporate anything and everything that was brought to us and looked at it and analyzed it. And now, without any process, without any consideration, this is just, it's completely renumbered and completely, there's new things put in there, large, massive changes in some of the stuff. And I think that it's sort of disrespectful of the process and the committee and the larger task force to do that. But it's been done, so we have to deal with it. But I just think that, we've spent a lot of time on a process that was defined as how the task force was going to operate. And a lot of people put in a lot of time, and those people are sitting around the table. And so I just find that this stuff that was added is, you know, we haven't vetted any of it, and as you're saying, I agree with you 100%, that some of this stuff is stuff that we need to think about a little bit, and not just throw it in, because, I mean, if it's gonna be a deal where next year when we do these things, we're not gonna do anything until we show up at our January meeting, and then everybody has a bag that will go to the center, and we'll collate it all and go. But that's gonna be the new process, but I don't think it is.
Matt, thank you, Dick. Matt, I just wanna call on you. I don't know who the main author is, but
Well, again, I'll speak for myself and not for the other two. And Nick, I respect that. I respect what you had to say, and I guess I left our meeting in December, hearing that this report wasn't, I heard that they didn't need to finish it in December, we had another month, to keep working on it. So that was my understanding when we left in December. If that was wrong, then I apologize for that. As far as the correct political channels that make the most sense to move landing forward, I'm not privy to the best way for that to happen, and would defer to people that understand the political process much better than I do. Speaking personally, I think it's important that the broadband speed goals are revisited. And who or how that happens is less important to me than it's